Mary staggered her way home, the early hours of Saturday morning shrouding the world in silence. The clock had long passed 2, and her Friday evening, which had begun so innocently after work, had spiraled into a blur of indulgence. Alongside her friends, she had reveled in a whirlwind of music, drinks, and laughter at their favorite bar. The night's euphoria, however, had turned into a haze of exhaustion and imbalance. Grateful she hadn't driven, Mary mentally thanked Darren, her ever-reliable designated driver, though she wasn't looking forward to his inevitable lectures on the way home. These late-night escapades had become almost routine for her over the past year. As she stumbled down the dim hallway, her heels clinking faintly against the hardwood, she fought to stay upright, her thoughts sluggish and jumbled. Her husband was likely fast asleep by now, unaware of her drunken state, or so she assumed. A mischievous smirk crept onto her lips as she considered making just enough noise to rouse him. She relished the idea, the bitterness she carried lately bubbling beneath her intoxicated surface. Reaching the staircase, Mary bypassed the guest room without so much as a glance, her focus singular. By the time she arrived at the master bedroom, she leaned heavily against the wall for support. With a shove of her foot, the door swung open and she blinked, startled to find the bedside lamp still on. Her surprise deepened when she saw the bed empty. Where the hell is he? The thought thundered through her foggy mind, and unease prickled at her senses. Her legs moved instinctively toward the bathroom, but a search of the upstairs yielded no sign of Darren. Growing frustrated, Mary descended the stairs, her heart thudding louder with each step. A faint glow from the kitchen caught her attention, and hope flared that he might be dozing at the table, waiting for her return. Instead, she found the small hood light above the stove casting shadows across the room. It was empty. Her frustration simmered, anger taking root. "He's going to catch an earful when he gets back," she muttered under her breath, her eyes sweeping the cluttered countertop. Something shiny caught her eye, the faint gleam drawing her closer. Pulling a high-top chair toward her, she sank into it and picked up the object, a wedding ring. Darren's wedding ring. Its familiar weight in her palm sent a cold ripple through her chest. Beneath it lay a mess of items, her passport, a folded ticket, and a sealed envelope. She stared at the items, her unease deepening. Glancing at her watch, she noted it was 2:30. Exhaustion overtook her. Despite the turmoil brewing within, she rested her head on her folded arms. Sleep claimed her almost instantly, the unanswered questions swirling in her mind. When she woke, it wasn't the light or any noise that stirred her. It was the hard floor against her side. Groggy and disoriented, Mary rubbed her face, her head pounding. Glancing at her watch, she realized hours had passed. It was now 5:45. The anger she'd managed to push aside earlier surged within her. Darren must have returned while she was asleep and left her there on the counter, unbothered by her presence. Fueled by frustration, she stormed up the stairs with renewed determination. Yet again the master bedroom was empty. This time, however, her movements were purposeful. She descended the stairs swiftly, flipping on the kitchen's overhead light. The sudden brightness illuminated every corner of the room, but nothing had changed. Darren's absence was glaring, his car still missing from the garage. Her gaze returned to the countertop. The items remained untouched. Picking up her passport, she flipped it open, noticing the outdated photo and wondering when she had last needed it. The ticket, a one-way to Florida, made no sense. Confusion twisted into dread as she picked up the envelope. It bore her name, written in Darren's unmistakable hand. Her fingers trembled as she tore it open, her heart racing. Forgetting her reading glasses, she dashed to the nightstand in the bedroom to retrieve them, the urgency in her chest unbearable. Back in the kitchen, she perched on the stool, the letter clutched tightly in her hands. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Mary sat alone, the dim light from above casting long shadows across her wine glass. She hesitated, her fingers tapping nervously against its edge before unfolding the letter to confront the truth Darren had left behind. The stillness of the room was heavy, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock. Mary sat at the kitchen counter, her gaze fixed on the crumpled letter. The echoes of her choices and mistakes reverberated through her mind, each memory sharper and more painful than the last. Darren had moved on. The thought gnawed at her, a bitter mix of anger and sorrow. She hated the idea of him finding happiness without her, yet she couldn't ignore the hollow ache in her chest, the loneliness that had taken root and refused to leave. The letter had become a fixture on the counter, its edges worn and softened by her restless hands. Every sentence she reread felt like a fresh wound, a piercing reminder of what she had lost, or perhaps what she had let slip away. The words blurred as she tried, for the 100th time, to make sense of their finality. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sudden crunch of tires on gravel. The sound startled her, and she froze, her heart thudding as hope and fear battled within her. Rising from her seat, she moved to the window, pulling back the curtain to peer outside. Her pulse quickened, but it wasn't Darren. Instead, a delivery driver stepped out of the vehicle, cradling a small package. Confused, Mary opened the door, her hands trembling as she accepted the parcel. She studied it for a moment, trying to recall if she had ordered anything, but her memory offered no answers. The box was light, almost unnervingly so, as though it carried nothing at all. Returning to the kitchen, she placed it on the counter and hesitated, her fingers lingering on the seal. Finally, she opened it, her breath catching when she found a smaller envelope inside. Written across its surface in neat, deliberate handwriting were the words, "Foreclosure." Her throat tightened, and she paused, reluctant to confront yet another blow to her pride. Summoning courage, she tore open the envelope. Inside was a short note, the sight of Darren's handwriting both familiar and foreign, like the echo of a voice she hadn't heard in years. "Jumar, I hope this reaches you in good health and spirit. What we shared will always be a part of me, but it's time for us both to move forward. Enclosed is a keepsake, a reminder of the good times we had and a token of my gratitude for the life we built, even if it wasn't meant to last. Be kind to yourself. Darren." Beneath the note was a small framed photograph. Mary lifted it out carefully, her breath hitching as she recognized the image. It was their family frozen in time. A moment captured years ago, long before bitterness had crept into their lives. They looked so different then. Happy, carefree, brimming with love and possibility. She stared at the photo, her vision blurring as tears spilled down her cheeks. The grief she had buried for so long surged to the surface, raw and unrelenting. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel it fully. She cried not out of anger or resentment, but from a deep well of acceptance, mourning the love that had faded, the family that had fractured, and the woman she had lost along the way. As the hours slipped by, the night gave way to the soft light of morning. The photograph remained in her hands, its edges damp with tears. Darren's actions had forced her to confront a truth she had long avoided. She was as much to blame for their unraveling as he was. By dawn, a quiet resolve settled over her. She couldn't change the past, but she could reshape her future. Darren's message had been clear. It was time to move forward. And for the first time in years, Mary felt ready to try.